As returning viewers to my channel know, over the course of 2 months, we went from having 3 backyard hens to 0. The short version is 2 of our 3-year-old chickens stopped producing eggs in February and then died very suddenly in April, leaving us with 1 lone hen. While these events were tremendously disappointing, they did give us an opportunity to sort of reevaluate whether or not keeping backyard chickens was a worthwhile endeavor for us. Ultimately, we decided that it wasn't, and we decided to rehome our solitary survivor after a quarantine period and with full disclosure of the deaths of her coopmates. Now, interest in backyard chickens has definitely spiked recently as bird flu has torn through commercial flocks, driving egg prices through the roof. And while the temptation to secure your own egg source is understandable, getting into backyard chickens might not be all it's cracked up to be. Here's why. We actually got into the whole backyard chicken game completely by accident and without conducting any meaningful research ahead of time, as is our MO. 3 years ago, a pullet randomly showed up in our backyard garden and refused to leave. We put out a few notices on local social media to see if we could locate the owner, but received no responses. At that point, my wife suggested we roll with the situation and just keep the thing. So I built an admittedly somewhat shoddy chicken pen and coop on the cheap, as our local ordinances don't allow free-ranging chickens within city limits, and we went out and purchased 2 more birds, the maximum allowed by city ordinance. It was just a matter of time before we had more cheap eggs than we knew what to do with, right? Oh, how naive we were. Once our chickens reached maturity the following spring, we did have a brief abundance of eggs, but this was a fairly temporary condition. Unbeknownst to us at the time, there are a lot of factors that can negatively affect egg production. Winter, molting, extremely hot weather, illness, and age can all cut into the amount of eggs a bird will produce. Apparently, egg production actually peaks when a hen is 1 to 2 years old and then begins to steadily decline at about 3 years of age. Also, completely unexpected weird stuff can cut into egg production as well. For instance, our birds went through an egg-eating phase last spring that resulted in 2 eggless months until I was able to finally correct the behavior. I accidentally dropped an egg in the pen, and before I had a chance to clean it up, our chickens gobbled up the mess and I guess instantly developed a taste for their own eggs. It's pretty unsettling, actually, when you think about it. I was able to correct the problem by improving their nesting box, but the experience was definitely a costly pain in the ass for a couple of months. Production setbacks like those I just mentioned might be less of an issue if you can keep a lot of birds, but as I noted, my city limits our flock size to 3. So, with a few chickens, it's impossible to reach any kind of economy of scale on production, and it will ultimately cost way more to feed and care for the chickens than it would be to just buy eggs at the grocery store. Believe it or not, the shoddy eyesore of a pen and coop that I've been taking down in this video cost at least $500 in materials. That's about $166 divided over the 3 years we had the birds. After that, we're looking at a good $25 a month in feed, bedding, and other supplies, bringing the yearly cost to keep the chickens up to about $466 per year. Again, that figure does factor in the initial cost of the pen and coop build. Even at the peak egg prices we saw over the last year, $466 buys way more eggs than 3 hens will lay in a year. A quick Google search shows eggs currently running a little under $4 a dozen at Walmart, so the cost to keep my chickens for a year would buy right around 1,200 eggs, and without the work and hassle that inevitably accompanies caring for live animals. I'm not trying to come off as negative and discourage anyone from giving backyard chicken keeping a try. My experience and perspective is really just one of many. If your municipality allows you to keep more birds than mine does, it might actually be more worth it from an economic standpoint. Ditto if you can free range your chickens and let them forage for at least a portion of their food needs. Also, some people just enjoy the experience of keeping poultry. Any eggs they get out of the deal is a bonus, as opposed to that being a primary goal. So I'm not saying don't get chickens. I just recommend doing maybe a little more research before getting into it than we did, especially if you're getting into it with the goal of securing a supply of affordable eggs. Quick tangent. Here's the garden bed I converted the chicken pen and coop into. It's a little rough, but I did make it from lumber that spent the last 3 years exposed to the elements, so I'm not going to complain too much. And as much of a bummer as it was to lose our chickens, I am glad to have the space back and I'm happy to convert it into a little more growable area. I can't say that I won't ever raise poultry again. I'd actually love to give it a second try if we're ever fortunate enough to live on a larger piece of property with room for enough birds to reach that economy of scale I was talking about earlier. Now, and if nothing else, I appreciate the learning experience my time as a backyard chicken keeper provided. So, until next time, let's hope it all doesn't die.